people could take their seats. Will this be shown before Saturday? Who knows?
I don't know, it might be. Give it a shot.
Yeah.
Besides, they should get excited.
Should I mention names? People could take their seats. Good evening. I'd like to call this meeting to order, second session of our annual town meeting, and I announce that we have a quorum of more than 5 voters present. I'd like to begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Paul Monaco, Chair of the Board of Selectmen. Paul, so back.
Pledge allegiance to the
flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to call up the tellers. Arthur Shapiro, our head teller, Arnold Levison, Carol Levison, Louise Monaco, Malcolm Smart, John Covino, and Jeff Lingham to be sworn. Now I'd like to have our usual motion to extend the floor to our town council, Stephen Madaus, who's here with us tonight. Say hello to Mr. Madaus. Can I have that motion? And second? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. And that passes. Thank you. Now announcements. I've been asked to make an announcement and given a prop. Rediscover Ashland, Saturday, the 10th. It's going to be great. It's going to be a treasure hunt, chili cook-off, face painting, pizza, music, prizes, a treasure hunt. You want to be sure you get your booklet, which you can get at Town Hall. You can get it at a lot of businesses around the town. And it's only the kickoff. It goes all summer long. Rediscover Ashland, so everybody should take advantage. Is there anyone else who needs to make an announcement? Or is there any committee that needs to make a statement at the outset? Okay. When last we met, we had completed through Article 16. Article 12 is presently on the table, and we'll commence the evening starting right up with Article 17. To see if the town will vote to accept the provisions of General Law, Chapter 44, Section 53F and a half, establishing an enterprise fund for solid waste disposal and recycling receipts and expenditures related thereto, pass any vote or take any action relative thereto. The Finance Committee recommends that the town so vote. This will establish an enterprise account for trash fees. This will allow the fee to be strictly used for trash and no other services. Is there any discussion? Ms. Sammons.
I'm just going to give a brief is this on? I don't think we're on.
Just hold it close. I think it is.
Okay. I'm just going to give a brief explanation of this. Last year, the town established a trash fee for residents to avoid significant reductions in the services in the budget. This year, the town is implementing a pay-as-you-throw program for trash collection and disposal, which promotes increased recycling and reduces the overall trash stream. The town has been working with the Department of Environmental Protection to develop the program. One component of the program is the establishment of an enterprise fund for pay-as-you-throw. The benefit of this approach is that we'll keep all of the revenue collected through base fees and bag fees with the trash program, and any excess revenue will remain with the program and benefit the users rather than being closed out to the general fund each year. DEP also endorses this approach and highly recommends it for communities beginning pay-as-you-throw programs. Excess revenue can be used to reduce the base fees, for example, or provide a certain number of trash bags at reduced or no costs in future years. Conversely, if the revenues are less than the costs in a particular year, adjustments can be made to the rates to compensate for the shortfall. So basically, we're just keeping it in one bucket so we can monitor, are we collecting enough to cover the costs, or are we charging too much and we should give a reduced fee? Thank you.
Further discussion, Mr. Hoffman? Is that on the top? Yeah, thanks.
As I understand, if we do approve this, that it will come into effect as of July 1, is that correct? Thank you.
Mr. Crow?
Is my understanding correct that we will have a trash fee and pay per throw regardless of how this passes? This is just a matter of how the town accounts for it. Is that correct?
Mr. Rush?
Thank you. Ken Rush, Belknap Circle. With the establishment of this fund, is it intended that the pay-as-you-throw program be completely self-sufficient, or is there going to be a subsidy from the town revenues as there had been in the past?
Ms. Sammons?
No, it's going to be completely self-sufficient.
So we could be seeing a substantial increase in our fees if...
No, you won't see a substantial increase in your fees. It's fully funded this year as well.
Fully funded by the town or by the users?
By the users, by the fee.
Oh, I see.
Further discussion? And on the Finance Committee's motion for acceptance of Article 17, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. And that passes. Article 18. See if the town will vote to establish due dates to be effective beginning in fiscal year 2007 for the payment of municipal charges and bills, and to fix a rate at which the interest shall accrue. Such charges remain unpaid after such due date under General Law, Chapter 40, Section 21E, in accordance with Section 57 of Chapter 58. And I have a motion from the Board of Selectmen that I will read because it's pretty short. Motion that the town vote to amend Division 5 of the Town of Ashland Code, Department of Public Works, by adding a new Chapter 338, Sanitation, as follows. Chapter 338, Sanitation, Article 1, General Provisions, Section 338-1, Billing. And here it is. Effective July 1, invoices issued by the town for charges related to municipal waste collection and recycling shall be considered due and payable 30 days from the bill date. Charges that remain unpaid after such due dates shall accrue interest at the rate of 14% per annum. Pass any vote or take any action relative thereto. And the Finance Committee recommends acceptance. Discussion, Ms. Sammons.
The Selectmen are requesting that a new section be established in the code that will give the town the same ability to set due dates for solid waste fees as other fees assessed by the town, and further to assess interest for fees unpaid as of the due date. Right now, if you don't pay your trash fee, we have no mechanism for establishing a lien against your house, charging you interest like an unpaid water bill. It just sits there. And this bill would give us the provision to do that. The due date of 30 days from the issuance date of the bill and the 14% interest for the unpaid bills are consistent with Mass General Law and are the current practices for the town regarding tax bills. These measures will ensure timely collection of bills and maintain a positive cash flow for the operation of the trash collection program.
Discussion? Any discussion? Mr. Rush?
Mr. Moderator, thank you. I guess my question goes procedurally to the requested amendment or the establishment of a new law as opposed to accepting the general law. Is that within the four corners of the
Okay.
article?
I guess that's for me.
Okay.
We discussed this prior to the meeting, and it was town council's view, and I concur that the language of the article, see if the town will vote to establish a due date, and the motion to establish a due date and the charges, the interest, follows within the limits of the article, so I think it's appropriate. Any further discussion? Then on the amendment that I read, which I guess I'll read again because I don't know that you have it in front of you, the amendment reads Section 338-1 billing, new provision in Chapter 338, a new chapter. Effective July 1, 2006, invoices issued by the town for charges related to municipal waste collection and recycling shall be considered due and payable 30 days from the bill date. Charges that were made unpaid after such due date shall accrue interest at the rate of 14% per annum. And on the Finance Committee's recommendation for acceptance, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. And that passes. Okay. Article 19. See if the town will...
Don't we have to pass the original article now that we passed the amendment?
No, we don't, because that is the motion, that is the main motion related to that article. Okay, so it's not, you know, it's as if, by analogy, there's an article that says appropriate money and then we do a line item. Okay. Okay. Article 19. See if the town will vote to authorize the town to be effective beginning in fiscal year 2007 to impose a lien on real property located within the town for any local charge or fee that has not been paid by the due date under Chapter 40, Section 58. Pass any vote or take any action relative thereto. Finance Committee recommends that the town so vote. This will give the town additional enforcement capacity with those residents not paying what is owed. Any discussion? Mrs. Sammons.
The acceptance of this section of Mass General Law will provide the town the additional enforcement capacity to collect unpaid trash fees for the services being provided. When water and sewer bills remain unpaid for a period of time past the original due date, the town is able to apply them to the real estate bills and then lien the property for non-payment if they remain uncollectible. The town is seeking the same authority for the trash services as it currently has for these other enterprise funds. So basically, the last article you passed that we establish a due date and they accrue interest if they don't pay by the due date. This article gives the town the power to lien the property if it goes past a reasonable period, just like would happen on a water or sewer bill.
Yes, sir.
Joe Howard, 38 Valley Road. The town currently collects 14% interest on all debts. And I know on property taxes, we send out demands after 30 days. And there's a reason why people get behind in their bills. It isn't because they're scofflaws. It's because these times are tough and many people don't have the money to come up with these bills on time. Nobody enjoys paying 14% interest rate. And by putting liens on these properties that you're suggesting, puts an additional burden on the taxpayer of this town. I, for one, feel that that's an additional burden that's unnecessary. The town, as I said, has a 14% interest rate. That's almost bordering on usury, coupled with our taxes, which are almost confiscatory. We don't need a lien, no.
Mr. Bell?
I just had a general question. On Articles 18 and 19, you were talking about them in reference to the trash collection, but could they be applied to dog licenses, for instance? Someone doesn't pay the dog license, they get a lien on their house? I just don't know, is this specifically related, or is this a general law that can be applied to any bill that's owned the town?
Yeah,
Mr. Purple?
this general law can be applied to a variety of things, but every time it's voted, it has to be specifically identified what it's being voted for. So in this case, it's just for the trash.
So in this case, you're applying it strictly to the trash?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Okay, then on the Finance Committee's recommendation for acceptance of Article 19, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. I'd say the ayes have it. Article 20. To see if the town will vote to authorize the municipality to extend the school department beverage contract for 1 year, pass any vote, or take any action relative thereto. Is there I have no motion. Is there a motion from the school committee for acceptance? Okay. Any discussion on Article 20? Seeing none. On the school, Mr. Bell?
I believe it's true, but have you removed all of the sweeteners and stuff that were put into used to be put into the machine? I think that you're now to the point where you're dealing with just fruit juices or water.
Dr. Hoffman?
Because there's an educational question there.
Just a quick response to the gentleman. At this point, we're following state and federal guidelines which have not yet ordered removal of soda. And when and if they do, we obviously will comply. The town, the school department is putting together a wellness policy, which the school committee has voted on once. They'll be voting on it again. And that policy actually talks about banning the sale of soda in the building. So once that's approved, that would take place in the next school year.
In other words, the machines now are still serving sugar in the machines. No, sugar additive drinks like sodas.
There are, I believe, 2 or 3 machines that vend soda in teacher areas. If you were to go right out here, you would not see soda access to students.
That's why I wondered.
Yeah, and we're moving away from that. I mean, that's our goal. And I think, again, we're looking at water, flavored water, Nantucket nectar, and seltzers from this particular company.
Okay, I think you're moving in the right direction. I think it's an action I assumed had been taken several years ago, because soda has been shown to cause hyperactivity, lack of attention, and various other things which go against the education of children. And I always felt it was rather a poor investment to be getting back several tens of thousands of dollars, and while we're squandering millions of dollars in effect going the other direction. So I would urge you to complete the turnover as soon as you can so that you get rid of something that is known to be detrimental to education. Thank you.
Mrs. Teller?
Judy Teller, Saddle Hill Lane. I would also like to know if we could add to ban things like candy sales that also promote sugar with the kids and overweight kids.
Any further discussion? Mr. Bell?
I was talking about sugar, not necessarily in soda. I assume that you're not selling candy bars, but in any case, if you are, those should be certainly excluded also for the same reason, and also caffeinated products, all of which tend to detract from classroom effectiveness.
Mr. DeSoni?
Yes. What by title is mean by beverage? What is the list that it's going to be on?
This list includes, it's beverage vending machines. So as I said, there are several machines across the district in teacher rooms that vend sodas. And then the rest of the vending is water, flavored water, no sweetener of any kind in that at all, Nantucket nectar juices, and some seltzers. The biggest seller is water, actually.
Okay, and when the kids come in early for the mornings, quick breakfast, and the lunches, would that be the same way of doing things with the beverage ban?
Most of the vending is actually not during school hours. It's definitely not vending during lunchtime. But I'm not sure if kids would, if they came in early and they grabbed a water and went to the cafeteria, they may do that. But it's mostly for after hours.
And when would this be put in effect?
This is to continue a contract that was let actually by bid 3 years ago, and town meeting must act if we wanted to extend it. Last year, town meeting voted to allow us to extend it to a 4th year. This would be the 5th and final year. And so next year, we couldn't come back to town meeting for this particular vendor. We'd be going out to bid. And the feeling was there's no advantage to the town to go out to bid at this time. We're happy with the vendor. They give us the best commission of the major companies, and frankly, we'd like to stay with them longer, but we'll have to go back out on to bid after next year.
Okay, then on the school committee's motion for acceptance of Article 20, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. And that passes. Article 21. To see if the town will vote, to see if the town will approve pursuant to General Law, Chapter 40, Section 4A, for the Board of Health to enter into an intermunicipal agreement with one or more governmental unit to provide public health services which the Board of Health is authorized to perform. Such agreements will be made in accordance with intermunicipal mutual aid agreement to be entered into between the town and various governmental units. Pass any vote or take any action relative thereto. The Board of Health moves for acceptance, I presume?
Yes, Mr. Moderator, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Oram?
Mr. Moderator, this article is based on an initiative from the state as a deliverable in Homeland Security funding. We are required to meet certain deliverables every year to receive funding, supplies, and so forth that helps in case of an emergency. Might it be an emergency dispensing site that needs staffing? Might it be that we have a separate case here in this town of meningitis where we need public health nurses to come in and help us out from other cities and towns? That's what this request is for, so that we can enter into those agreements. We are presently talking with a couple of budding towns. They're going through the same process, and we await the town's decision on this article.
Okay, further discussion? Seeing none, then on the Board of Health's motion for approval of Article 21, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it, and that passes. And we'll move now to Article 23. You recall we dealt with 22 at our last session. Article 23. To see if the town will vote to transfer funds that have been borrowed by the town but which are no longer needed to pay for projects or costs for which they were initially borrowed, to pay capital payments as required by the intermunicipal agreement between Ashland and the town of Framingham. Pass any vote or take any action relative thereto. The Board of Selectmen moves as follows. That the town hereby vote to transfer the following amounts that have been borrowed by the town but which are no longer needed to pay for projects or costs for which they were initially borrowed, to be used to pay capital payments as required by the intermunicipal agreement between Ashland and the town of Framingham. Those two line items are Article 13 of the May 9, 2001 town meeting for sewer maintenance downtown, the amount of $60,238.70, and Article 13 of the May 15, 2002 town meeting for the Chestnut Street gravity line, that amount being $189,787.98. Discussion? Mr. Schuster.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. although this is Article 23, this general discussion also applies to Articles 24 and 26, and I would ask the moderator's indulgence that we deal with them sequentially rather than going back and forth. If that's
Sure,
with
one discussion.
with the
Go ahead.
moderator. I want to give a little bit of background on capital projects borrowing to help explain what's going on here. When we have an article that requires borrowing, what typically happens is it comes to town meeting approves, because if they don't approve, it doesn't matter, approves the borrowing article. The town then begins the project using cash on hand if there's any available, or using temporary borrowing, which is called BANs, bond anticipation notes. Once the project is completed, it is then bonded permanently. Unless, the exception is if it's a very large project like this building. We certainly didn't have the cash on hand to pay for this building all at one time. We did some permanent borrowing up front. That's generally restricted to when we have a larger project. It's not unusual to have projects that either were abandoned or didn't cost as much as we originally authorized at town meeting. So what we do is perform a periodic review of these bonded projects. Such a review was recently undertaken beginning in March by Assistant Town Manager and Finance Director Mark Purple, Treasurer Collector Chris Goodwin, and Town Accountant Sharon Emmerich. This is an extremely comprehensive, complicated, and confusing project, especially to those of us up here. And on behalf of the board, I want to thank them for all their efforts in compiling all this information. What they found is that in borrowings running from June 2000 to October 2004, we had permanently borrowed money for a large number of projects that we didn't need. In some cases, we borrowed for the projects before the projects even started. There are some cases where it made sense, as I said before, to borrow before the project started or early part of the project, but in these cases, that was unfortunately not the case. The bottom line is that we borrowed roughly $3.2 million more than we needed for these projects. And let me give you some examples. There are about 30, so I won't detail them all. Of the $3.2 million, roughly $2.1 million came from sewer projects. The big ones are, in June 2000, we bonded $1.7 million for a Chestnut Street lift station that had been approved back in '97. We only spent $1.2 million, so we had an extra $521,000. The same bond, we also borrowed $900,000 for the West Union sewer design from '97. We borrowed $900,000. We only used $350,000, so we had another over $500,000 left. In October 2004, we borrowed $500,000 for the sewer main construction from May '02. We only used $30,000 of the $500,000. And also from that same borrowing, we approved $600,000 for the Chestnut Street gravity line, also from May of '02. We only used $300,000. The other big chunk relates to general fund issues, and the biggest item here, $907,000 were general fund issues. Of that, $750,000 relates to Town Hall. We originally borrowed $4.3 million for Town Hall because that was what the cost of Town Hall was going to be, but we neglected to account for the fact that CPA was paying a big chunk. So we borrowed the full amount, even though CPA was going to reimburse some. We had that left over. There was also $179,000 excess from water projects. So what we have to do at this point, two things. One, figure out how to make sure this doesn't happen again, and two, fix it. To figure out how we ensure this doesn't happen again, first of all, we have new staff. Our new town manager started in March of '05. The initial borrowing we're talking about was October '04. Town Manager Purple started this year. Town Accountant started after October '04 when this happened, and our Town Treasurer had been here for only a month or two when this happened. So the first way we're ensuring this doesn't happen again is a whole new staff in place who are attuned to this, aware of it, and will make sure this does not happen again. The second question is, how do we fix this? Well, what we're going to do is we have some borrowings that we are going to need to do in the future. We're going to take this $3.2 million and allocate it, if these warrant articles are approved, to those projects, meaning we don't need to go out and borrow any more money. We'll already have borrowed all the money we need for these projects. That goes to the three articles. Let me start first with 23, the one the town moderator just read. This will pay $250,000 towards the IMA agreement, the IMA with Framingham that was approved in May. Part of that, there were some capital costs of $250,000. That will be funded through Article 23 if approved. Article 24 deals with the House Street water main. We need $660,000 to pay for that project. Article 24 will take monies from existing sewer projects and pay for that House Street main project. Article 26 deals with the Cadra property on which we are standing. $2.25 million was what town meeting approved last fall to settle this lawsuit relating to this land. There are a series, as you will see in the detail of the article, of projects where we will reallocate money from those projects to this. So what that means is, and there's also a rescinding of the borrowing authority for Cadra in Article 26. Last year, we authorized that. We thought we were going to have to borrow extra money to do it. We now don't have to borrow money for that. We now don't have to borrow money for House Street. We now don't have to borrow money for about a quarter of the IMA payments. And if there are any other questions, of course, we'll try to address them. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Dr. Hoffman?
I notice in Article 24, the amount on the Chestnut Street gravity line differs from the amount that was read as a motion by the Board of Selectmen by some $78,000 or so. Could you explain that, please?
Mr. Schuster?
Mr. Moderator, there is a total of $300,000 available from that project. Article 23 will use $189,787.98, which I believe is the number the moderator used.
Okay.
The remaining balance, about $110,000, is used in Article 24.
Thank you.
Mr. Shapiro?
Hi, Arthur Shapiro, 180 Myrtle Street, also a member of the Board of Health. Just wanted to comment that I've got to give credit where credit's due. I've attended many Finance Committee meetings, Selectmen's meetings, and this was no small undertaking. Yes, there's new management in town, and I've read a lot in the papers about criticism about how we could hire this assistant town manager, this kind of money. Well, the fact is, for $3.2 million, he is certainly paid his salary from now until he's in the box, and then some. So I want to just express thanks that it's really appreciated. Thank you, Mark.
Yes, sir.
Mark Nelson, 73 Carriage House Path. I'm a trustee of the Great Bend Farm Trust. The gravity line runs across our trust property. For the past 6 to 8 weeks, there's been no construction on the project to complete it at this point. We don't feel that the project is complete. They cleared a path of about 40 feet wide and approximately 300 yards long of trees that have not been replanted up to this point. There are 2 property owners that have heavy gravel in their backyards that have not been taken care of. There's places along the property that have blocked water flow. We're really concerned about this and would hope that you address it as well as you're stating that this project is complete at this time.
Mr. Petrin?
I'm not sure we're stating all these projects are 100% complete. If I'd be glad to set up a meeting, and I'm not aware of
We've
the
been
issues
talking
here.
with Doug Small and Selby, the
I'll be glad-
Conservation Department, to try to resolve this. So anything you can do to help us would
I'd be
be
glad to
great.
set up a meeting and have that discussion, and this is a financial discussion piece here versus the project discussion, and I'll be glad to set up a meeting with you.
And our concern is that the projects are being stated that there's budget items that aren't needed for these projects, and that's what we're concerned about.
Mr. Crow?
Yeah, Preston Crow, 41 Rockwood Drive. For 23, you're moving some sewer-related bonds to spend on a sewer-related municipal agreement. On 24, it looks like you're taking sewer-related bonds to do water-related work, and on 26, you're taking all sorts of bonds of different types to... Is this going to... is the repayment of these no longer going to be associated with the original enterprise funds, or is sewer money going to now be paying for non-sewer things, and are we messing the accounting up, or is that taken care of?
Mr. Schuster?
Assuming approval of these articles going forward, all bonds will be reallocated to where you're seeing them, and will be paid from the appropriate area. So
Great.
sewer fund won't be paying for the land.
Mr. Powderly?
Bob Powderly, 42 Wayside Lane. Adam, you had mentioned, in addition to hiring new people into town to look at these things, you mentioned a periodic review of bonded amounts and amounts spent against those bonds. How often would you conduct the periodic review, and to whom would whoever conducts that review report their results to?
Mr. Schuster?
There's no defined period for the periodic review. It's really dependent upon when we issue bonds. We issued bonds in 2000 and not again until 2004. So we are of the hopeful opinion that everything in the past is now fixed. So no review will be necessary until we have more bonds that we issue. Or the 3 projects that we're looking at have come in under budget. Cadro won't come in under budget because that's the amount that it cost us to settle it. The IMA won't come in under that amount because that's part of the IMA. So the only question would be the House Street water main if it came in under $660,000. And if that did happen, then it would be something we need to address by future movement of that money. And I think John's going to correct me on something I probably said wrong.
Mr. Petron?
No, not this time, Mr. Schuster. I'll reserve my right for the future. It'll be a yearly review, Mr. Powderly. Absolutely, this should be done on a yearly basis, and it should be a review as part of the town manager's budget moving forward. So these are the things I think we're trying to work in tandem with Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee so that these are reported up front. And I think, hopefully this year, people saw a lot more information that was presented, in detail by various areas. And that's our goal, is to get to that point where we're actually doing proper reviews on a regular basis. But in this case, what's called a capital review should absolutely be done on a yearly basis. It should be reported to the Board of Selectmen and to the Finance Committee, and it should be made part, in general, of the town manager's budget that's presented on a yearly basis.
Thank you. Yes.
Hi, Sean Finnegan, 27 Lorraine Drive. Mark, I'm sure you've looked at this, the interest rate differentials between the existing bonds and what it would have cost had we gone out to borrow on these projects, as well as the amortization on all of the bonds that we're talking about allocating over to the new project, and how that either helps cash flow, is neutral cash flow, or positive cash flow.
Mr. Petron?
The bonds, it was all reviewed moving forward, but the bond rates are the rates that were accepted in the past.
I understand that, but what we're doing now is we're moving that money over instead of borrowing today. Is the rate differential preferable now to do that instead of going out and reborrowing? I'm assuming it is.
Well, what would be occurring is, reborrow, okay, I get the question.
You see what I'm saying? If we went out and got two,
most of our bonds were, there was, the big bond, the last bond we did, I can't speak to all of them, but the last bond we did had a 10-year non-recall provision. Is that correct, Christine? Okay.
Right. That was my point.
And the other,
it's more positive.
That's correct. And the other position is that you can get the recall provision in your bonds, but you pay a higher rate at the time. And the town had chosen to get a slightly lower rate and have a 10-year non-recall provision there. So these are all decisions that are made up front. So yes, it's not economical to attempt to recall these bonds and to attempt to get a lower rate. So what we're doing is moving bonds. We're paying no matter what. And instead of on projects with money just sitting there, we're actually moving it towards projects in which we're paying money out. So it's definitely economical for the town to be, taking these votes.
Right, instead of paying them ahead of time.
That's correct.
Mr. DeSoni?
Okay. What we're doing is not doing what we did in the past and paying upfront in the future. So we won't get bonded and get poorly managed like we did before. The way the Selectmen and the Finance Committee worked this out was they looked back in the past and said, no way we're going to do this again. They did one heck of a job listing these bonds and what the schools and the towns, municipals and what the past town managers did not sink into, this group we have here did. I'm saying we should pass this and have them be happy and just have them go on the same straight arrow road. Thank you.
Mr. Bell?
Just Bill Bell, Concord Street, an inquiry. When this first came up in the Selectmen's meeting, the problem you were facing and Mark Purple's discovery of it, there was a concern that we could be liable for penalties from these bonds, at least from several of them. Have we escaped that, or do you know yet?
Mr. Schuster?
To be determined.
Mr. Rush?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Mr. Petrin, you had indicated that the idea was to not have this happen again, but as I understand it, for most capital projects, even the ones we'll do in the future, all you're going to have at the onset is an estimate, which may or may not be completely correct. So your statement that we're going to keep this from happening again, does that pertain to we're not going to borrow before we need it, or this annual review will make sure we uncover any excess funds more frequently than every 4 or 5 years?
Mr. Petrin?
I'm not sure I stated it wouldn't happen again. I think what happens is that every once in a while you do have, and I'm trying to remember the term, a small amount, de minimis amount, left in a bond on something that occurs. What you do try to do is borrow temporarily moving forward, but sometimes it's not economically feasible to do that because you do pay higher, on temporary notes than you do on permanent notes. So, but what you should be doing is on a yearly basis, you do this capital review, and you make these decisions on a yearly basis to adjust your portfolio on your bonds as to what's occurring. So it does absolutely need a yearly review. The review had not been done here. And some of these are 5- and 6-year-old issues, which is, shameful. It should not have occurred. So the goal would be every year we look at our bond portfolio, we look at it and we determine, is it where it needs to be? And then we bring it to town meeting for adjustments as needed. So that would be my position in moving forward. I would state that as often as possible, we would not do a permanent borrowing until we know what the amount is to move forward. But there are times on a big project like this, trying to, when you got $30 million on the table, $40 million on the table, sometimes that's not economically feasible to keep going on a temporary borrowing. So again, I hate to put hard and fast rules, but hard and fast reviews are absolutely necessary.
Mr. Small?
Doug Small, DPW. Just to help clarify on the sewer project with the Great Bend Farm, that's not part of these articles here. It's a separate project which involves Fafford.
Okay. Any further discussion with respect to Article 23 only? Okay, then on the Board of Selectmen's motion to the town transfer amounts that have been borrowed by the town but which are no longer needed to pay for the projects or costs which they were initially borrowed to be used to pay capital payments as required by the intermunicipal agreement between Ashland and the town of Framingham, Article 13 of the May 9, 2001 town meeting, $60,238, and Article 13 of the May 15, 2002 town meeting, $189,787.98. All those in favor of the article, of the motion, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. And that passes. We'll move to Article 24, which I will read, and I'll read the recommendation. To see if the town will vote to transfer funds that have been borrowed by the town, which are no longer needed to pay for projects or costs for which they were initially borrowed, to Article 22 of the May 11, 2005 annual town meeting for the Howe Street Water Pipe Replacement Project, and further to reduce the borrowing authorization under Article 22 of the May 11, 2005 annual town meeting, pass any vote, take any action relative thereto. The Finance Committee recommends that the town so vote to transfer the following amounts that have been borrowed by the town but which are no longer needed to pay for the project or cost for which they were initially borrowed to the use of the House Street water pipe replacement project. Article 27 of the October 17, 2001 Hilldale and Green project, $79,292.49. Article 13 of the May 15, 2002 town meeting, Chestnut Street gravity line, $110,212.02. Article 23 of the May 15, 2002 meeting, sewer main construction, $470,495.49, and further to reduce the borrowing authorization under Article 22 of the May 11, 2005 annual town meeting from $740,000 to $80,000. This article transfer funds from unused bond articles to current bond items to avoid additional bonding. Is there any additional discussion with respect to Article 24? Seeing none, then on the Finance Committee's recommendation, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. And all those opposed, no. And that passes unanimously. We'll move to Article 20. I think we'll move to Article 26, and then we'll move back to 25. To see if the town will vote to amend its action taken under Article 7 of the warrant for the fall 2002 annual town meeting as amended by vote of the town under Article 12 of the warrant for the fall 2003 annual town meeting, as so amended, the high school authorization, so as to permit the expenditure of funds authorized to be expended thereunder for the additional purpose of paying land acquisition costs associated with the high school project, increase the total amount authorized to be expended pursuant to the high school authorization from $38,770,000 to $41,020,000, and to determine whether this additional amount of money to be expended with respect to the high school authorization shall be raised by transfer from available funds, by borrowing, or any combination of the foregoing, and to rescind the action taken by the town under Article 24 of the warrant of the fall 2005 annual town meeting, pursuant to which the town authorized the borrowing of up to $2,300,000 for the payment of additional costs of acquiring the Cadre property, so-called, pass any vote or take any action in relation thereto. And the Finance Committee's recommendation that the town so vote as follows. The vote of the town taken under Article 7 of the warrant for the fall 2002 annual town meeting as amended by vote of the town taken under Article 12 of the warrant for the fall 2003 annual town meeting as so amended the high school authorization. B, and hereby is amended to permit the expenditure of funds authorized to be expended thereunder for the additional purpose of paying land acquisition costs associated with the high school project. 2, that the total appropriation contained in the high school authorization be and hereby is increased from $38,770,000 to $41,020,000, and that to meet this additional appropriation, the following amounts that have been borrowed by the town, which are no longer needed to pay for the projects or costs for which they were initially borrowed, are hereby transferred to the use of the high school authorization. Article, I'll read the article in the town and the meeting and the amount. Article 17 of the October 22, 2002 town meeting, $713,548.98. Article 25 of the June 1, 2004 meeting, $3,602. Article 25 of the June 21, 2004 meeting, $103.50. Article 29 of the October 19, 1994 meeting, $100.47. Article 25 of the May 10, 1995 meeting, $22,779.01. Article 4 of the May 13, 1998 meeting, $2,694.22. Article, at least in the future, I won't have to read this long list, right? Okay. As, gladly. You'd never ask Richard Burton to waive the reading, would you? Okay. But in various meetings in various amounts, and that the town take action under Article 24 of the warrant for the fall 2005 annual town meeting, which action authorized the borrowing of $2,300,000 to pay additional costs of acquiring the Cadro property, so-called, be and hereby is rescinded. Okay. Any further discussion with respect to Article 26? Yes, sir.
Bill Brown, 118 Oak Street. Many of us were supplied a bonded debt schedule prepared by Mr. Petron, I assume, or Mr. Pearl. And I notice in 2007, payments against debt would be 8.1 million, 8.2 million. In fiscal 2008, it would drop to 6.57 million. Does adopting Article 26 impact in any significant way that bonded debt schedule?
Mr. Petron.
It will have some impacts to that schedule, and it's not major, but it will have some impacts to that debt schedule, because when we did that schedule prior to, this was information that we've been developing over a period of months, but we didn't have the exact info. So when we passed the budget, we made the highest assumption so that we wouldn't be in trouble next year. So there will be some adjustments we can make moving forward.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Bell?
Just a question for information. The increase in the Cadro property acquisition cost, is there any possibility that the state funding can be used for that? In other words, would be possibly eligible for additional funding for the state, or is it separate from land acquisition?
No, land is never funded through the building
I was
project.
afraid that was the answer.
Further discussion? Then on the Finance Committee's motion, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. That passes. And we're going to move back to Article 25. To see if the town will vote to transfer any remaining funds under Article 8, school design, as previously authorized by the October 17, 2001 annual town meeting, to be used to construct, furnish, and equip new school facilities, and to renovate and/or repair the several existing school facilities under the direction of the School Building Expansion Committee, pass any vote or take any action relative thereto. The Finance Committee recommends that the town so vote to transfer the sum of $356,520.01, which remains borrowed but unexpended under Article 8, school design, as previously authorized at the October 17, 2001 annual town meeting, to be used to construct, furnish, and equip new school facilities, and to renovate and/or repair several existing school facilities in the town under the direction of the School Building Expansion Committee. This article will transfer the remaining bond capacity from the design project to the construction project. No additional funds are being appropriated. Total cost of the project remains the same. Discussion. Mr. Nealon.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. John Nealon, 42 Higley Road, Chairman of the School Building Committee. Back in October of 2001, the initial funding for this school project was appropriated in the amount of $3.2 million for the initial stages of the design services. Subsequent to that town meeting, the full amount for the design services and project construction of the project was appropriated in the approximate amount of $41 million. That $41 million included that previously appropriated $3.2 million. When we approved the $41 million, we should have negated that previous action by town meeting on the design services funding. However, we did not. It was an oversight, and the purpose of this article is to correct it. The bottom line of this article is that it includes the necessary clarifying language that will resolve any future potential accounting and auditing issues. It clears up the record that the full amount of the appropriation for the design and construction services for the school is approximately $41 million. In anticipation of what would be a very good question, this article does not authorize any further borrowing for any further monies involved with this school project. Thank you.
Discussion. Mr. Hannah?
I have just a short question on that issue. If this money that was for design was not spent in totality, and there's some $356,000 left over, and there's been a request to use it for additional school facilities that were not accommodated by the first request, is there an opportunity to transfer that money to maybe town facilities that may be necessary to be updated because of not being properly funded, or is this just being limited to the school because of the definition of the bond?
Mr. Petrin.
Okay, Mr. Hannah. I'm going to try to understand your question here. The first part of it is, this is really an adjusting article, so the way the votes had been taken in the past didn't allow for the total. This again, as Mr. Nealon stated, that this allows for the total amount to still be spent on the school project. What it came down to is the town had taken one vote for design and another vote for building. They used the total amount as their guide for doing the project, and because we're being sticklers on the accounting side, we're not allowing monies being spent on the construction to be taken from the design article because that's not the legally the intent. So this is just an adjusting article to do that. Now, obviously, if the town wanted to vote these funds to another project, it has that capability potentially to do so if it met certain criteria.
Okay, so this is the choice. In other words, you had an option to do with the excess funds, either continue an educational expenditure or improvement, or divert the funds to some other town function that you thought might need that. In this particular instance, you've decided to keep the money within the school district and spend it on whatever is necessary.
I'll put a theory on the table. This isn't, decision or for me to voice an opinion, but let me put a theory on the table. The town voted a certain amount of project to complete the building of a high school and other, school programs. This vote is allowing the town to finish that initial vote. There was a flaw, there was an error in the first vote as to the way the monies were appropriated into two parts. But by taking this vote, it clarifies the initial intent, which was to spend, what was the total amount, the bond on the two buildings, the design 41 million. So this vote will allow the town to complete its intent of spending $41 million on the school expansion program.
So are you suggesting there is no excess? This is just an accounting to wash it out?
That's correct.
Just to wash it out to its final...
There is no excess, and there was not planned to be any excess. What happened was, because of the way the votes were taken, it was segregated into design money and building money, but the total was $41 million. What happened is they didn't spend as much in design, they spent more in building, and because of the way the votes were taken the first time in error, the town actually tried to correct it in a second town meeting, but erroneously it created a second problem, came back a third time, and just instead of correcting it, put it back to the first vote, which was still in error. And so this is a fourth try at attempting to do it right.
You're doing well. Thank you very much.
Mr. Hannah, you're a challenge sometimes, so I appreciate keeping me on my toe.
Mr. DeSoni.
Okay. first thing, Mr. Moderator, I'd like to point out that Mr. Head is on the right side this time, but there's no Mignani.
I noticed that.
Okay. Second of all, this almost erases those other three errors by what's going on here with this article tonight. And fourth point, whatever I'm going to say, we're here in the school. It did cost, there have been mistakes, but now they're remedied. Just go on, vote for it, and hope that we have people who will enjoy what we have, and it's just to have it. And I would say one last thing. Good evening, Mr. Teller. How you doing?
How you doing?
All right, your turn.
Just a thing that John started to bring up was the money has been spent. We're in the building. The second part, what I was going to state was that the money for this project was caught, the error was caught the first year. We tried to correct it at town meeting. It wasn't done properly. And then we came back again to try to correct it, and it was reversed, but the wording wasn't done right, so we're here again to correct it, hopefully the right way this time. But this is just a correction. It was in 2002 when it was actually done.
Okay, on the Finance Committee's recommendation, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. And that passes. Move to Article 27. See if the town will vote to accept as public way under the provisions of General Law, Chapter 82 as amended, Susan Lane and Catherine Lane as laid out by the Board of Selectmen as shown on a certain plan, and to accept such easements as are shown on said plan, and security shall be held by the town in the amount of $9,950 to ensure completion of outstanding work. Said plans on file with the Office of the Town Clerk, pass and a vote to take any action relative thereto. The Planning Board recommends approval of Article 27 with $1,000 held back pending legal paperwork. Mr. Crowell.
Mr. Moderator, this project is a subdivision that was constructed and approved back in the 1980s, and it's been through a long period before it got finally completed. I was out there today because it was raining out. The last work was completed in terms of trying to improve the drainage as well as possible. I think the only issue really the outstanding is the fact that we don't have minimum information on the legal aspect in terms of the deeds, and that $1,000, at least the minimum of that $1,000 would cover any of that paperwork.
Any discussion on Article 27? This will require a 2/3 vote. We will start with a voice vote. All those in favor of the Planning Board's motion for approval, please say aye. Aye. You get no points for extra enthusiasm. And all those opposed, no?
Clarification?
Yeah. Can I, all those opposed, no?
Nobody said anything.
Okay, David?
Just a clarification, you said $1,000, but the article reads $9,950.
Yeah, but the motion of the planning board is for $1,000 held back. Am I correct in
It
reading
wasn't
that?
as a substitute motion.
Well, that's what I'm... Oh. Okay. So let's try it again so that we get it right. For acceptance of Article 27 as written, with security to be held in the amount of $9,950. Okay? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. And all those opposed, no. And that passes unanimously that way. Okay. Article 28. See if the town will vote to amend Chapter 282 zoning, Section 6, site plan review and design plan review of the Town of Ashland Code by deleting subsection A5 and inserting in lieu thereof a new section A5. Pass any vote or take any action relative thereto. What I understand is that I've got a motion from the planning board. Well, Mr. Curlin, why don't you explain?
There's some minor modifications in this, and we're suggesting it in the substitute motion to clarify. One, that the title of the whole section be reworded slightly, that the title would say, projects requiring site plan review and design plan review, and that the sentence, no building permit shall be issued for any of the following uses, be placed at the end of the bylaw instead, because of the nature of the way this is written. The attempt here is to tighten up the existing site plan review, in particular to get rid of loopholes such as a number of landscaping companies that had no structures and other uses that we find that would not require site plan review currently. So the intent here is to tighten that bylaw up so that uses along with structures are included in site plan review. The board has heard it on several occasions. There's been hearings, it's been posted and been advertised appropriately.
Discussion on Article 28. Then we'll vote on the planning board's motion as amended. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. And that passes unanimously.
Mr. Moderator, could Articles 29 and 31 be done together when you get a chance?
Article 29 and 30? 31. Okay, we can discuss them. We'll take them up individually, but we can discuss them together. Okay, Article 29. See if the town will vote to amend Chapter 282 zoning, Section 18 zoning map of the Town of Ashland Code by adding a new zoning district labeled Downtown Mixed Use District as follows, which I will not read. Pass any vote or take any action relative thereto. The planning board moves for acceptance of Article 29. Okay, Mr. Curlin?
This amendment is a product of several months with a number of committees that were involved into rezoning downtown to make it a more compact and mixed-use area and to encourage local economic development. There's been several hearings on it. It's been posted. It's been advertised. The planning board and its representatives and the committees went on a road show and did a number of presentations regarding this with various groups. The purpose of the first article, the 29, is the actual mapping. The map is out in the corridor if someone wants to look at that and gives the bounds. To answer the reporter's question that was given to me today, it does not go beyond, it goes just shy of the Gamewell building, so it does not go down Pleasant Street at this time. So it's confined to just the area mainly around Main Street and Front Street and the areas near the tract in that area. So it's very confined. It goes almost down to Telecron building, but it does not go beyond that. So there's a map out in the corridor if anybody wishes to see the actual bounds. And again, this was posted and advertised, and as I said, there were several hearings.
Discussion with regard to Article 29 or 31. Dr. Hoffman?
Yes, this article and Article 31 are among the most important innovations that are being introduced at this town meeting. It will change and improve the character of the downtown of Ashland make it a real downtown for the first time in quite a long time. And we have great hopes that this will bring business as well as mixed use with residential apartments above some of these businesses. This is a very forward-looking planning proposal, and I urge its passage.
Mr. Bates?
Mr. Moderator, Ed Bates from Hilldale Road. I'm one of the maybe insignificant part authors of the Article 31, and new town council has suggested that on page 27, permitted other uses be deleted. So I would offer that as an amendment to the article to remove permitted other uses. Town council's argument is that it's not necessary that accessory apartments and incidental primary uses is covered with the initial application.
Okay, can we, I'll make a note. And
Okay.
We'll come to it, we'll officially come to it
Okay.
momentarily, and then we'll want to do that. Mr. Hanna?
While others are out observing the map, I would like to just comment a minute on Article 31, which is sponsored by the Planning Board. And as you read through that article, you also find that the Planning Board is the special permit permissioner. And I suggest that that's probably somewhat of a conflict of interest. If the sponsor of the article is also going to be judge and jury over whether or not a permit could be granted, a special permit. I suggest that perhaps the zoning board in town, which is fully been is probably the best innocent place to put the special permit grant in, and the planning board should be probably the applicant, the person who approves the applicant, much like the building inspector, so that if they disapprove the applicant, they become a co-conspirator in the issue before the zoning board, representing the town as to why they turned it down and the reasons why someone thinks it should not be. By making the author of the article also the one who decides whether or not it's going to get a special permit is, well, it's sort of risky, I believe, and I suggest you just reconsider that from a legal point of view, which I have none, and I'm sure you do. Thank you very much.
Mrs. Teller?
Judy Teller, President of the Ashland Business Association. I think this is a fabulous article. I think it's going to be great for Ashland. Also, it comes on the heels of a Globe article this Sunday that told about with the decrease in land available, especially in this part of the country, that this kind of development would really be helpful, especially where we have the rail station now, where people can live and shop without getting in their cars and spending gas at $4 a gallon. To do all of their errands by foot and then to get on the train and go to work. I think this is fabulous.
Mr. Hill?
Bob Hill, building inspector. Whoops. To begin with, zoning articles are written by the planning board. They are the authors of all zoning articles. Chapter 48, Section 6 authorizes 3 special permit granting authorities. Zoning board, Planning Board, and Board of Selectmen, which we don't have any of those yet. Still think we should do it for used cars. I totally disagree with Mr. Hanna. That's not unusual. And that these issues on the downtown are mainly site plan review type issues and development issues at which the planning board has much more expertise, and the zoning board is really for appeals. That's why it's called the Zoning Board of Appeals. So, and these are not an appeals case. These are special permits, and the authority does belong with the planning board.
Mr. Bates?
Just offer one additional comment that maybe town council would like to react to Mr. Hanna's comments, but we've reviewed a number of similar bylaws in other communities that do use special permits in the downtown area, and it is the planning board that does have the issuing authority for special permits.
Any further discussion? Mr. Crow?
Yes, I'm a member of the planning board, but just speaking for myself here, in Article 29, where we define the map of what's included, I expect that we'll come back in 6 months, a year, 2 years, and expand this to include other properties as landowners petition or as we get some more experience with the feel of this. With Article 31, we've done a lot of work on it with lots of different committees in town, all reviewing this. But it's still not perfect, so we probably will have little tweaks to this here and there, and at least 1 or 2 amendments on the floor tonight. So, but I think we're in pretty good shape to have the overall framework of having the legal implementation of the vision for downtown that we've been working on for a number of years.
Okay, then with respect to Article 29 only, okay, thank you. Then I think what we'll do is we'll officially open Article 31, which I will read. To see if the town will vote to amend Chapter 282 zoning of the Town of Ashland Code by adding a new section 282-50 as follows. This was going to be the highlight of my night. But I won't read it. Pass any vote. You'll have to read it for yourself. Take any action relative thereto. The planning board recommends acceptance. Okay, any further discussion? Yes, Mr. Bates.
Just the amendment to eliminate
To delete
page 20, to delete on page
27 permitted other uses?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so what we'll do first is we're going to vote the substitute motion to eliminate the section at the bottom, or almost the bottom, of page 27, entitled Permitted Other Uses, and uses and structures customarily accessory and incidental to the primary use, A, B, and C, sub-areas. So on Mr. Bates's motion to delete that one subsection, permitted other uses, all those in favor, please say aye. And all those opposed, no. And that section is deleted. And then as amended, Article 31, all those in favor of the planning board, Mr. Crow?
I have another amendment.
Okay.
The planning board voted to recommend adding under section G, which is on page 28. We realized there was nothing in the article on sign requirements, so we want to add after the first sentence as follows: all new signs will follow the sign requirements of the commercial B zones as noted in 282-35.
Okay. Okay, so is there any discussion with respect to Mr. Crow's addition under section G? All new signs will follow the sign requirements of commercial B zones as noted in 282-35. Okay, then on Mr. Crow's amendment to add that sentence under section G, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Okay, and now Article 31 is amended, right? Okay. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. And all those opposed, no. I think I heard some no's. If I hear some no's, we have to have a 2/3 vote, so if I hear some no's, we'll have a standing vote. I'll try a vote again. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Hearing nothing, I declare it to be unanimous. And now we'll move back to Article 29. Then on the Planning Board's recommendation for acceptance of Article 29, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. And that passes unanimously. And we'll move to Article 30. To see if the town will vote to amend Chapter 282 zoning, Section 22, commercial districts of the Town of Ashland Code by deleting the following front lot line, deleting the following front lot line setback for signs listed under footnote 3 in 282-22C dimensional regulations, signs freestanding 15 feet, pass any vote, or take any action relative thereto. Mr. Curlin.
Mr. Moderator, this was, again, product of a series of hearings and discussions with people such as the Inspector of Buildings. What we determined was that there was a conflict between the setback requirements there and in the zoning section of the sign section of the zoning bylaw. And because of that, this is to correct that inconsistency, for lack of a better way of placing this, and just eliminates that by eliminating the sentence and making the references to setbacks right in the sign section of the zoning bylaw.
Mr. Bell?
Sorry, almost knocked my teeth out. Just a general comment to the boards involved in this downtown rezoning, and that is that in the past we've made attempts to enhance the development of downtown, which have gone nowhere basically, and then sat and done nothing for a long time. So where you're talking about tweaking it over the near and middle range future, I would urge you to tweak it more often rather than less. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Then on the Planning Board's recommendation of acceptance of Article 30, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. And that passes unanimously. We'll move to Article 32. To see if the town will vote to amend Chapter 282 zoning, Section 22 commercial districts of the Town of Ashland Code by adding a new subsection H as follows, which I will not read. Pass any vote or take any action relative thereto. And the Planning Board recommends acceptance, is that correct, Steve? Planning Board recommends acceptance? Okay. And I'll recognize Mr. Barberi.
Mr. Moderator, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. My name is Peter Barberi. I represent the petitioners of this article, as well as William Rodenheiser, who last year entered an agreement with the Greens, who own the property in front of the former high school, consisting of about 8.5 acres. The purpose of that acquisition was to develop that property as a multifamily use. When the agreement was signed, we commenced some inquiry with the town as far as the use of the property. We had a number of meetings with various people in town. The input we got back and the question we got back was to look more at a mixed use, similar to the discussions you just had in the downtown, similar to the rezoning that took place for Wildwood. Mixed use is also allowed in an office commercial district. So we went back to the drawing board, looked at the site, realized that, again, the site was zoned residential, so commenced discussions with people from the viewpoint of the rezoning of the property. When we look at the zoning map, and hopefully you all have a copy of the map that was up at the tables, you were all involved in some rezoning of the rail transit district, as well as some commercial A rezoning. So at the present time, the MBTA railway line coming in off of 135, the vacant lot across the street from the Dunkin' Donuts is presently zoned commercial A. And then, of course, the rail transit district is in the back there. A few years back, the town rezoned across the street from that a couple of parcels also to commercial A. So we developed a plan which simply took the end of the existing commercial A zoning district and extended it up 135 to the green property. We also thought it appropriate to include the parking lot of the former high school under that commercial zoning. And the reason being that if the town were ever to declare that portion as surplus land, then the town, of course, would be able to sell it off as a commercially zoned piece rather than a residentially zoned piece, thereby more value. The discussions also entailed the next piece, which is the mobile gasoline station, saying that therefore that brought an appropriate end to the commercial district. So the plan is to take the existing commercial A on the north side of 135 from the MBTA line in, roadway in, and simply extend it down to the mobile gas station. The use of the property, as I talked about, was originally multifamily, but the input we got was looking at, again, more the concept of a mixed use, commercial on the first floor and apartment above. We looked into that. That seems feasible. Great location for it. It provides significant revenues back to the town. These would not be necessarily children. That's not the market that enters into these things. So there's a potential significant tax burden to the problem with that project going forward. So the second half of this petition is to allow in the commercial A district mixed residential and commercial uses. As I stated previously, that concept is allowed in other districts under the zoning bylaw, but is not an allowed use within the commercial A district. We have proposed it as part of a special permit process with the planning board so that any project we do, any of the other parcels come forward in the same similar type use would have to go through a special permit with the planning board. That process would also be on top of any site plan approval with the planning board. That's the general outline of the proposal. We met with staff on the concept of the zoning as well as the mixed use. Support there was positive. The only thing that came back from staff, which we believe we can accomplish, is to provide an emergency access from any development we propose to the former high school driveway. I believe the comment came from the police department that right now there's only one way into the old high school. So if there was ever something that blocked that driveway, we could provide an emergency access and you can get around that concept. That's something that we can do as part of any development plan we had. We met with the planning board a couple times. I believe they wrote to you, Mr. Moderator, in support of the petition. And hopefully we can answer any questions you may have.
Further discussion? Now, before we get there, Doctor, Mr. Curlin, let's see if I have this right. The planning board recommends acceptance with the addition of the sentence at the end, that the number of dwelling units permitted shall not exceed 5 per acre. Is that correct? With that addition? Okay. Dr. Hoffman.
Yes, Mr. Moderator, I'd like to know whether the proponent has yet engaged a traffic study for this area. At certain times of day, the area around the access road to the train station is rather congested, and I wonder what effect this project will have upon that if it goes through.
Mr. Barbieri?
We have hired GPI out of New Hampshire to come in. They took a look at all the studies that were done for the rail transit project. They then projected our projected project traffic generation into 135. The worst scenario from our perspective is that during the PM peak weekdays, our traffic would end up as a 2.4% increase. Other periods of time it would be less. AM it would be a 1.4. So we understand that, and there was a question raised from the viewpoint of the planning board, but the numbers we're talking about should not have a significant impact.
Mr. DeSoni?
Okay. I have a couple of questions and curiosity. This is all within the old high school, within the back boundaries. Traffic study, school hours. Have you back up here, Peter?
Mark, speak to the microphone,
I wanted
Mark.
to speak both
Speak to the
ways.
microphone.
Both ways here. With the school hours and the supposed residential commercial, with the one main driveway, how would that be in a two-way traffic with a traffic study working with the zones and with no traffic light?
Mr. Barbieri?
Again, the previous studies that were done for the railway project, typically when you do a traffic study, you count the number of vehicles out on the roadway in various intersections. Then you analyze the worst case scenario, which is called peak hour traffic. The reports of those which were done for the town for the transit identified the peak hour traffic between 7 and 8 in the morning and 5 and 6 at night. So our analysis of the 2.5% is during the peak hour, which is the heaviest traffic hours during the course of that. There will be, of course, buses in the morning at the high school at 7, but that's taken into account in our analysis of the 1.4% in the morning. And again, if there was an accident at the high school, we would provide that second means in off our development.
Mr. Hanna?
On that same issue, 2.4% of something, I'd like to know what something is and the date of the study, because I'm involved in that with the Zoning Board of Appeals right now.
Mr. Barbieri?
Again, the studies were taken from the rail transit with a projected growth into that. The volumes that had been used in that with I think it's a 2.5% growth factor on an annual basis, which is typically the accepted standard in this area. The West Union Street north of the site, again, I'll focus on the peak hour, PM, that was reported at 1,958 vehicles passing north of the site. South of the site was, in fact, that same number. So with our traffic, it came to 2004 and 2005.
And that was what year?
Again, those were not doing a new count now. We would have to do that as part of the planning board study we'd have, but that was using the rail transit report, which is probably 3 years old, but with a 2.5% growth factor, I believe, every year.
And that's times 2.5% per year?
That's my understanding, yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Further, Mr. DeSoni?
Yes, the transit is the main point of focus, but still the mobile station, not exactly the traffic study, but you got still them. The zoning, the other people there that they talked to already, were talking about certain feet and use of properties, with the fence in, squared off, 400 feet. And with the mixed-use residential commercial, how big and what's going to be built there to account for the feasibility of the property itself? And the green property, what's going to be going specifically in there, in the greenhouse property?
Mr. Barbieri?
Again, we're involved in the green property, which is an 8.5 acres. There's some wetlands area there. The project we put before the planning board consisted of 2 different buildings, because the property suites are on the back of 3 other residences out in front of 135. The footprint of the combined 2 buildings we had was roughly 36,000 square feet. We don't have any tenants identified for that commercial space yet. We're talking about a second and third with dormer provision for apartments above, probably in the range of 36, 38 units, which is within the 5 units per acre, which we're agreeable to. And again, those traffic numbers that we projected are based upon that building development. There are, again, 2 small residential properties in front of the site, roughly 7,500 and I think 10,000 square feet. which really don't allow them in and of themselves to be developed on a commercial basis by the time you got to provide parking and setback and buffers and everything else. And there's one larger parcel of roughly 50,000 square feet, which could potentially be developed, but under the scenario of not more than 5 per acre, you couldn't have roughly 6 apartments as part of that project.
Okay, and my last one is max use, and when will all this begin? That'd be my last question.
Mr. Barberry?
In this,
Yeah.
in the map, and when will
Again, if you look at the map, the shaded area is the proposed extension of the commercial A. So it starts at the property identified as 59 West Union, extends all the way up to 103 West Union, which is the mobile gas station. And that, again, that includes the front of the parking lot for the former high school. But as soon as it's rezoned, then it has to go to Attorney General, assuming the Attorney General approves it. It could be anywhere from, 60, 90, or 120 days out. Once that is done, we would commence the process with the Planning Board for site plan review and a special permit. So presumably nothing would, if it was to be approved, probably wouldn't happen until late fall.
Mr. Rush?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'm noticing that the wording of this warrant covers, 1, a bylaw amendment, and 2, a rezoning. Previously, the examples I've seen at town meeting is that would have been 2 different warrants. Speaking of the review by the Attorney General, if we pass this warrant as written, will we be running into problems down the road with its form?
Should we put town council to work?
We had a brief discussion on that when it was combined, because we had submitted these 2 separate petitions. And I think there was discussion with former town council, and it was brought up to go this way. And that's why it's the way it is.
Mr. Petrin?
I can just confirm that discussion. I don't have the parameters of the discussion as to why, but there was 2 citizens' petition that was presented, one on zoning and one on the change. And prior town council, had worked, I believe, with the attorney and planning board to consolidate into one article.
Ms. Suleiman?
Just a quick question. For the traffic studies that were done, we're wondering if there was any consideration of the potential development of the Western Nurseries land, which is just up 135 a little ways.
There was not as part of this. As you prepare and submit projects for town review, the typical requirement is you take into consideration projects, quote, on the board at that time. I understand that that project is potentially being redeveloped. If that project hits the board before we file with the planning board, we would have to include that in the updated report that we would have to do. Otherwise, when they submit, they would include our traffic in their report.
Mr. Hanna?
I suggest that traffic is an issue. And in addition to the Western Nurseries redevelopment, we have an affordable project, 40B project, proposed also for that same area in West Union Street. And I suggest that we not turn this article down, but I suggest we table it till we have more current traffic information to provide for the people to make a conscious vote. Thank you.
Sir?
Joe Norton. This thing is dangerous, Bob. I'd like to ask if the traffic study, which was your baseline, included the Gainer, the impact of the Gainer development. I think there's about 2,500 cars in that development.
Yeah, maybe I wasn't clear. That was the study we used as the base.
Okay. So
To start,
it wasn't
and then we
just for the
added on top of
MBTA,
that.
it was
Right.
for the Gainer.
And then we added on
Okay.
top of that. And
Okay.
again, once we start the process with the planning board, we have to do a new and completely updated traffic study. The issue of traffic was a concern raised by the planning board, so we're well aware of that. We got a lot of work to do on that issue, and that will be part of the review, public hearing process, that people will come out and have the opportunity to raise questions and get some answers.
Okay, thank you.
Further discussion? Yes, sir.
Yes, Brad Bond, 59 West Union Street. The traffic is generally, it's not something that's unique to Ashland. You know, it starts Upton, Hopkinton, Holliston, Southborough. You know, it's, you know, by one project, we're not going to solve everything, and we're not going to create ultimate problems either. It's all just a natural extension of the growth of the area. But by having a whole section rezoned and then come under the purview of the planning board, that will eliminate individual spot developments that will individually create their own entrance. And you know, this way we have a chance to have a planned and a well thought out traffic study, and have a natural flow to it, having one complete project rather than a series of little projects. And I don't know if you've been up, either walked the sidewalk down from the high school recently, in recent years, but you know, a lot of school children walk down that sidewalk. And it's sort of like walking down the breakdown lane of Route 128. When a truck comes by, you're literally this close to an 18-wheeler going by in the other direction. A project such as this will have other sidewalks and other roadways further removed from Route 135 that will add the added benefit of a cut-through for children walking from the high school to the downtown area. So there are pluses and minuses, but in the long run, this is a project that will give a lot more benefit to the town at less cost to the town than individual projects. And architecturally, it gives the town a chance to extend an architectural continuity up the street rather than just having a mixture of so it gives the town a chance to develop a character rather than just be you know, spots of different types of businesses with different architecture. So, you know, this is a chance for the town to take a big step ahead at minimal cost and an added benefit in tax revenue. So it's really a win-win situation. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Bill Kavanaugh, 163 Concord Street. In response to Mr. Hanna, it's not fair to say, you know, whether or not it's going to affect the traffic study or volume. The whole Metro West is getting more congested. But it might be more practical to think that the people that would be interested in the residents there would be using the T. So it's hard to speculate in that sense. We created the Redevelopment Authority several years ago specifically for this purpose, and to offer a commercial base in that strip is something profitable, like this other gentleman said. Also, in a side note, I'm a contractor, and I've worked for many developers in the Metro West area, and it's also important to consider the integrity of the sponsor or the developer. And Rodenheiser and his construction department developed solid high-end projects. The company represents the highest quality of workmanship and professional responsibility. And Bill Rodenheiser himself is of respected character and integrity. So I think that we may do well to you know, have some faith in this project. Thank you.
Okay. there any further discussion? Then what we'll vote on is the planning board's motion, which is for acceptance of Article 32 with the addition of the following sentence at the end. The number of dwelling units permitted shall not exceed a maximum of 5 units per acre. Okay. We'll start with a voice vote. All those in favor of acceptance of Article 32 as I've read it, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. And that passes unanimously. Okay. Article 33, is there a motion? Mr. Kerwin?
The Board of Selectmen wish to withdraw Articles 33 and 34, and with that, I move to dissolve town meeting.
Whoa. One thing at a time. Whoa, one thing at a time. Just.
You have an Article 12.
I mean, the Red Sox are rained out, so, you know, we can take 5 more minutes here. Okay, Article 33, there's a motion to withdraw. All those in favor, please. We have traditionally voted. I don't know that you have any right to withdraw it. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. Thank you. It's withdrawn. Article 34, motion to withdraw. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. 34 is withdrawn. Now,